Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Greg Heaney Music Podcast Show. This is my first video podcast release on YouTube. The audio will be available on Buzzsprout, Spotify, all those different places as well. Following is a conversation I have with Karla Harris, a great jazz singer who is in town in St. Louis right now, December 19th, 20th, performing at the Blue Strawberry in St. Louis. We have a conversation about music making, about improvisation, working with young people, music in general. There's a really good part in there about AI. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Myself and Ms. Karla Harris. Thank you very much. It's great being a music teacher during the day and having a head cold and a chest cold, especially at the holidays when I got to work with all the kids on their Christmas stuff and whatever.
I feel your pain.
Yeah. I was trying to do Feliz Navidad with a group and I couldn't hit the high notes. I was so distraught.
It's funny sometimes when you have a cold thing going. Sometimes the voice behaves in a way that can be more fun to work with. You know, you can work with it in different ways because it has a different timbre to it. You know.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I found at least today I could hit way lower notes than I usually.
Yeah.
That's a good silver lining for sure.
Yeah.
I love talking to performers to get their perspective on the state of the industry or different new approaches they're taking to connect with fans and all that fun stuff. So I'm kind of casting out a big wide net and trying to get as many really good conversations as I can.
Nice.
You have a show coming up. Was it December?
It's the 19th and the 20th, I think. But I think the second night now, last I heard, it only had like 4 seats left. So we're on our way to 2 sold out nights.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it should be really fun. But yeah.
Awesome. Let's start from the performance angle. So you're clearly a jazz singer. So what's some insight that you have on vocal improvisation? Because I work with kids trying to help them to gain these new skills and everything, but I wanted to get your perspective on how you approach improvisation, especially in the moment on stage, and any advice that you could give to young people starting on their journey of improvisation.
Oh, that's a great question, because one of the main things when I work, especially when I work with older students who, they already know how to sing and they've been performing and everything, but they feel like they look at somebody who does jazz and they think how can they just do it differently every time, and how do they think of those little things to do and approach it? And that's the main thing that they're curious about. And I'd say that while it looks like it is freedom, but you start with a structure. So you have to be comfortable within the structure, I say, before you can really rearrange the furniture. So if you think of it as a room with defined walls, a song, a piece as something with defined walls, the structure, the key, the changes, the harmonies that are happening and everything. And those well enough, you're familiar enough with those that you can kind of move the furniture around within the room then. And so part of it is being familiar with those technical things, the basics, and a tune or the structure of a tune. So you need that kind of knowledge. And then once you have that, then you have to kind of take a leap of faith. You have to kind of be willing to shed your preconceived notions about how the song has been sung before, how even you have sung it before, how you heard Ella do it or Sarah do it or whomever do it. And be aware that you are part of a conversation. And it's not just you. It's you and it is the musicians that you are making this music with. And so when you open your ears up and you become part of that merging of energy and that conversation, then you can gain ideas. And you are in the present instead of thinking about, oh, when I get to this thing, I'm going to do this. Or last time I did this, I'm going to do that. You're just in the present thinking, what am I bringing from my day, from my life, from my moment to this moment right now, right
That's
now.
that's a fantastic insight. Yeah, you mentioned the present and having the conversation with your fellow people up on stage. And I work with a lot of especially young people that suffer from depression and anxiety. And I've found having them perform live, especially like improvisational dance, and making up some songs or whatever, just going la 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 la, or
Yes.
banging around on percussion instruments. It's a great way to relieve some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety, because depression being, bogged down by what's happened to you in the past, and then anxiety being fearful of what's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
You come into the present moment and give that gift to the audience or to your fellow musicians, and then also or in an instructional setting to kids. It takes them out of that,
Yeah. That's so important. And I love that you said that. You know, in my teaching at university at Kennesaw State University, so I have weekly one-on-one lessons with each of my students, but then we also get together once a week as a group in a combo. And it's just the vocal jazz students. And I tell them the first day they come in there, this is a safe space. This is a playground with rubber mulch. You fall down, you ain't gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
You just get right on back up. We are all here. We're not here to compete with one another. We are here just to play. We're here. We're swinging on the monkey bars. We're climbing over the jungle gym. We're just here to play. And so when we might do an exercise where somebody says, you're the engine, so you give us a beat, you give us a groove or something. And then the next person, I said, now you add on to that with something rhythmic, perhaps, just give me something. It could just be ba-da, 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 ba-da. And then the next person, now you are like a horn. You're going to add something, a little melodic riff. Before you know it, they're improvising. They're right there in the moment. They're creating a tune.
For sure.
And it's very nurturing. It's very healing. I love that you said that, because bliss is in the present.
It is. And that's the principle of improv comedy and everything too. The yes and principle. And I love that you said, yeah, creating the safe space for people in your program. And I'm all about that too, especially with my kids with my school, and then I have a studio program as well. I almost enjoy thinking of it like I'm giving the kids the freedom to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Be
Um,
vulnerable.
be vulnerable, let it out there. And, if you get embarrassed, nobody cares,
Right, right, right.
you can only get better from that. And if everybody gets embarrassed and everybody's making music all together, we're having a good time.
That's right. That's right. That's what it's all about. And I have students who come in who deal with anxiety, who deal with depression. I've never had anybody who's come in and said, I am neurodivergent, but I have suspected perhaps, that they just had a different way of learning. I have a colleague who has ADHD, and we just, I just know that, he's at his limit, so you just, the brain and the mind, everybody is everybody, and it's a beautiful, mysterious, intricate thing. And, thank goodness we're not all the same.
Yes, thank goodness, most definitely. And you touched on improvised and spontaneous songs kind of popping out. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your writing process. I was listening to some of your records this morning as I was kind of waking up and getting the kids ready for school and everything. Where do you pull a lot of your material from?
So I would, a lot of times I get ideas when I'm out in nature, when I'm on a walk. I find that in the less busy times, I feel like the creative mind needs a lack of clutter.
Yeah.
It needs some peace and quiet to kind of pull things out of the ether. And I've gotten ideas like that. I've gotten ideas just at the piano, just sitting there, maybe because I'm more in the present, that I've never really thought about it like that, but I think that might be one of the reasons why. Um, it's not like it happens every day,
Yeah.
but in the times that it has happened, I've always known, oh, this is a song that wants to be born. It's a very definite sensibility. It's an idea that sticks with me. And it's usually I get a couple of lines and I also get the melody with it. And, I get enough where then I go back in and then I start fleshing it out some more. But it's a very insistent thing. It doesn't leave my mind. Some things I get an idea and I think, oh, that's kind of cool, and then, a day later I look at it and I go, oh, stupid. I never think about it again. But the ones that want to be born,
Yeah.
they push on you. Yes.
They hang around and they won't let you alone at all.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah, and I like that you mentioned the ether because I, I'm a songwriter as well, and I've tried to sit down and write things out from like my consciousness, you know,
Yes.
and it doesn't really work.
Oh,
Yeah, you
I,
have to
I
go
yeah,
ahead.
I've read those, I've read these articles that say make it a discipline and every day, sit down and do something towards your songwriting. It just, it wasn't an approach that brought forth any fruit for me,
No.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't ascribe to that either. I think it has to, yeah, like one will come to you at 11 o'clock at night. There's sometimes they'll come to you at 7 in the morning, sometimes at lunchtime. It just depends when the muse is going to visit.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And then you got to catch it. And then if it's good, it'll stick around.
Agreed.
Yes, most.
And what a blessing when it does. I
Yeah, it
mean,
is.
it's just the best thing ever.
Oh, it's so great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've been at a guitar and been like, how did that just kind of come out? Oh, that's fantastic. And now with record or cell phone technology, you can just queue up your little voice recordings app and
Yeah.
then put it down, record the thing, and then you have a demo, and then you can go into the studio.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then theoretically get it out to the world really, really quickly. So maybe I'll take a pivot into that direction. So you have a uh, a CD from 2019, Certain Elements, which is a suite of original and cover tunes.
Yeah.
And I was listening to that one this morning with the kids, and it was the number one CD on O's Place Jazz Newsletter.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was neat. Uh-huh.
So that's a CD. What other approaches have you taken as an artist to connect with your audience, either to expand your product repertoire or to connect directly with them and open up lines of communication?
Well, I mean, I do social media. I'm not a huge social media maven. It's never been easy for me to
Yeah,
do social media. I there are people who there are people who just rock it, you
yeah,
know. I was a late adopter. I remember when Facebook came out, and I thought, oh, I hope this is just a fad. It seems so weird.
yeah.
So it was a struggle for me. It gave me anxiety. It
Okay.
gave me a lot of anxiety. And just to be very upfront, like my finger would shake before I'd push, post.
Wow. Okay.
It was really anxiety producing. I think maybe because when I was growing up, you didn't like talk about yourself.
Right.
right? The whole thing about tooting your own horn and all of that was not something that you did. It was not becoming, it was unbecoming, and it could get you labeled things. And so the whole premise of it was just kind of like woo in my brain. It felt really self-focused, self-centered. So, but then I had to, then I had to think, this is just communicating. This is just, the people signed up because they want to know, they are interested. You basically are, not being nice if you don't tell them.
Yeah.
So so I started doing more of it, and then the more I did it, the more that anxiety went away, which is what we find with things that we fear, right? If we just go ahead and the more we do it, then it takes away the fear because the brain, the amygdala is going, oh, this isn't going to kill me, I will survive. So I got more used to that. So I do some social media. I do a newsletter. I like really my students. I learn a lot from my students because they're very active on things like Instagram, and they're so creative in how they are. And I would use my students as an example, not me, as far as how they are approaching the modern day music business. You have got to have you've got to have that presence, and you have to make noise. I mean, you have to go out there and you have to contribute to the noise. Is really how I think of it, and you have to kind of carve out. In a very consistent way. It has to be consistent. It has to be, like every day or every other day or at least 3 times a week or whatever, that you're getting yourself out there and you're posting snippets of your work, and you're posting things about what you're doing and where you're going, and then, or your dog or whatever, your personal life too. Because the whole idea of, being discovered and the record labels and all of that is just a thing of the past now. But I do think that, I mean, we've got artificial intelligence and everything coming in, and all of this different stuff. I do think that the live performer, the live musician, is actually going to be in a better place as this all happens, because we will all be craving humanity. We will all be craving reality. We will all be craving to know that it is real, what we are seeing and what we are hearing, that it is truth, that it is real, that it is coming through, and you will be able to feel the soul. And
Exactly.
so that gives me hope.
Most definitely. I've been thinking about the AI and different music that's produced with AI, or artwork that's produced with AI, and thinking about it and why I don't like it at all. So I used to do like my son's 7, so we used to sit at like an AI art generator and program just something crazy that he thought of, like Godzilla eating at McDonald's with hat on or something. And it would be really funny when it pops out, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's cool," and then like we would look back on it and like in a couple days, and I'm like, and we would both be like, "That's ugly. We don't like it," you know. And with AI generated music, like you can do kind of like dance music or like EDM, which is really repetitive and stuff and very intricate. But whenever I hear anything that's generated by just purely like a machine, I'm like I cannot listen to it. And I had an insight, and I think it's because AI does not suffer.
Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, I think you hit a nail on the head with that.
I think so too.
I think you did, Greg.
Yeah. Because the human condition is, we all suffer in our lives here on Earth, and art is an expression of that suffering and the process of healing, and connecting with other people who perhaps are going through a similar experience.
Right. That's so interesting because I've always thought of, as a singer, we are channelers of emotions. So there are people sitting out there in that audience who maybe cannot express an emotion, you
Hmm.
know, and so we are channeling it for them. And to your point, some of those emotions are hard. Yeah, or even if they're not hard, even if they are joyful, and joyful emotions as well. But the suffering, or even a machine can't feel happiness either.
Right.
AI can't is not feeling emotion.
Right.
It's faking emotion.
Yeah. Right. Which is not emotion. Yeah. There has to be like an element of that
The
ether.
soul.
Yeah.
It's the soul. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So
I love that though. I love
yeah.
that.
Isn't that good?
That's
Yeah.
good.
And I think it's totally true. And I think moving forward, society, needs to kind of. I think you're correct that society is really going to be craving, especially human live musical performances up on stage where it's a shared experience. Like I think there's going to be a big resurgence of like not as of like rock and roll, like old type of rock and roll, like from the 50s, Richie Valens, Buddy Holly,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Because
Acoustic.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's lively and it's imperfect and it's full of energy, and that's what especially kids really like. And I teach kids all the way from like age 3 until I've got some kids that are like 25, and they gravitate towards all that early like 50s, 60s, 70s rock and roll.
All right.
Yeah, they don't like any of the stuff that's coming out right now. So I think there's going to be a big resurgence. And in jazz is interesting though, because of a bunch of different factors. But the improvisational element, I think, is most definitely the most important part of it, and in the moment. Um, but anyway, maybe I'll ask you. What is your perspective on the state of jazz out there today?
Well, I think that jazz is a tree with many, many branches.
Cool.
And all of those branches come from the same trunk. So, it's all rooted in a tradition, but it's spawned, a lot of different styles of not only jazz, but of music. I mean, rock and roll, the roots of that are in the blues, and the roots of that are, part of jazz.
Yeah.
So it's all one trunk. So I think that whatever you are into, you can find something out there. Now, jazz has a very tiny piece of the pie in the music industry as far as sales and, whatever, streaming records and everything. But I think that I think that people are turning. I think there's more interest turning toward it as well, at least as far as we see our programs are growing at Kennesaw.
Awesome.
Younger people are interested in it because they do sense. I think they admire the technical skill that goes into it once they understand that there is so much technical skill that goes into it, but also the freedom of expression that is part of it.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a nostalgia element to it too, just like you were talking about with the 50s and 60s rock and roll. Samara Joy, when she won the Grammy a couple of years ago, she introduced a whole generation to songs that were sung in that were 40s and 50s. People were just discovering them for the first time again. So I think that's great. I mean, that's caused interest in a different generation of jazz. I think it's really important to keep the jazz legacy strong because it is American music. It's an American art form,
Mhm.
and it is the history. It's the history of culture in this country. It
Mhm.
has,
Yeah,
civil rights history in it, and yeah,
yeah, the original American art form.
that's right. That's right.
Um, and the approach to it is so antithetical to the Western art tradition,
Right.
at least from an educational perspective. Because with the Western art music tradition, it's all about reading the notes on the page, getting all the technique down and everything. Whereas with jazz, the emphasis is more on learning tunes, learning melodies, and learning accompaniment patterns and learning by doing, and then training your ear in the jazz repertoire as well. Um, I get people all the time telling me about jazz performances that they saw. They're like, "Oh, it's so amazing!" Like, did they write all that stuff down on paper and then memorize it before they got up and played
No,
it?
no. But
No.
the jazz tradition, jazz was created from European music and from African, sounds. So it takes some of its harmonies and things from European music, and some of the instrumentation from European music, but it takes traditions and rhythmic traditions and everything from African as well. So it's really a melding of the two, which also is another reason why it's uniquely American.
Yeah.
It's a country, and but but it's funny when I sometimes get students who are in the classical program and they want to dip their toe, they want to take a semester of, vocal jazz or whatever. And yes, they're so used to just reading the sheet and singing the note as the composer wrote it. But you can speak to this. It was interesting. I don't remember her name, but it was Christian McBride was doing an interview with a classical pianist, and I was listening to it last weekend, and they were having this very discussion about the difference between classical music and jazz music, and staying on the sheet with the classical. And she was saying that is true, but you're still supposed to bring something of yourself to the playing of that note.
Yeah.
And I wish she would have expounded on that, because, I mean, that's, what it's like is it the way you attack that note, or is it the way that you don't attack the note, or,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that, it makes you sound different from the violinist, next to you, or.
Right. Yeah. You have to put some sort of personal, emotional connection behind the delivery of what you're performing, no matter what tradition you're in. Yeah, and
Which is that human spirit that we're talking about.
mhm,
So,
right, and some people have it, and some people don't. Um, I've had a lot of students sign up for lessons where I kind of know after about a half an hour, I'm like this young person just is not programmed for music, which is a tough thing to realize and a tough thing to communicate to the student. But certain people have the gift for it, and certain people just don't. And you can keep on working on it, you can get better, but those that are gonna be great musicians are kind of born that way,
yeah.
I think. The same thing with sports, like me personally, I'm not much of a sports guy, but my brother can mop the floor with me, but I can mop the floor with him with music.
Mm.
I remember when we were growing up, we were taking a guitar at the same time, and he was trying to grab a D chord on the guitar, and he spent like 3 hours doing it, and he was about to like break the guitar. He was so mad doing it, and then I go up and I say, Mike, what are you working on? And he goes, a D chord, and then I picked up the guitar and played it immediately,
Oh,
and he almost killed me.
ah. Well, like I said, we're all different. I think
Everybody's
that,
different. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's important to celebrate people's differences. Also with classical music, I think something that's been lost in teaching classical music is the insight that a lot of classical composers, especially, were incredibly good improvisers.
Ah,
Like Mozart, he could improvise for days on end if he really wanted to. But like church organists, they would be able to improvise as folks were coming into church, and they needed music to be able to keep everybody calm or whatever as they're coming in, and not all of that was written down. And back in the day, improvisation actually was more pushed on classical musicians than, as far as I can tell, than it's pushed on them today.
that's interesting. Because you
Yeah.
have classical, classically trained jazz players who, you can hear the influence of it. Dave Brubeck was classically trained, for example, and you can hear the influence of that in his playing and everything.
Yeah.
I was making me think of, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'll get back to it.
You did a record of Dave Brubeck songs, right?
I did. Yes. It was the Dave and Iola Brubeck songbook, which was the first time that a vocalist had recorded in a studio a lot of his classics, and the lyrics were written by his wife of 70 years.
Oh, wow.
On almost everything, not every single song, but I think all but one that we recorded were Iola's lyrics.
Wow. They were married for 70 years?
70 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He passed away about, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I want to say about 10. And she passed away around 2014, I think, something like that. And he was a couple of years before her, I think. So, yeah. But that was an honor to do that project. It was it was a challenging project. I worked with an arranger and composer out of LA by the name of Ted Howe, and he's very creative and had great players on there. Well, Dave Weckl on drums and Tom Kennedy, who I'm going to be doing the shows with at the end of December back in St. Louis, both of our hometowns, was on the record as well. And yeah, it was a fun project to do.
Fantastic.
Just going to say, when we were talking about classical and jazz and everything, and jazz being an American form of music, when jazz was a young art form, it really was a thing that people listened to on the pop radio, like the popular music stations. That's where they heard jazz. It wasn't just relegated to the jazz station or the whatever, the nostalgia station. And people, bought the records, and there were groups like, Martha and the Vandells that were right up next to Ramsey Lewis and Nancy Wilson on the charts. And so and people danced to it. It was more, it was like a popular form of music. And I have a friend and a colleague who says that at some point the jazz became less about movement and more of a monument.
Ah.
That is where I think it started to lose its, this divide kind of came out. Well, jazz was kind of for the, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the elitists or whatever, you want to call it, the people it was too hard to listen to or something.
Yeah.
So, but again, there are all kinds of jazz being played, and whatever suits your fancy, you can find. But that was always interesting to me to think about historically. It was what people just listened to. Right.
Yeah, and that's an important part an important point. The element of movement for music, because groups of people gravitate towards music that they can collectively kind of move to, even if it's a silly, really easy dance like the Macarena or something like that.
Yeah.
I think good popular music has to have some element where people are inspired to move their bodies in time with music. And yeah, there's a place in St. Louis, Jazz at the Bistro.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. It's an absolutely incredible venue. It's like state-of-the-art sound. Just the lighting is impeccable, everything. And I've seen, buddies of mine that play in the clubs. I've seen them do gigs at Jazz at the Bistro, and it's almost kind of like awkward. You know what I mean? Because people are at the tables eating, and they're up on the stage playing this pretty lively music. And everybody's expected to be as quiet as possible, and like in a certain, place that kind of makes sense if it's like a listening room or whatever. But to me, like jazz, well, I spent 4 years in New Orleans, so like I know the New Orleans jazz where like everybody is partying and everybody's having a good time, but everybody's up and moving and bouncing into each other, and the music is real loud, and it just is full of all kinds of life. Yeah. So
there's a cultural thing there.
Yeah. Have you spent much time in New Orleans?
Not a lot, but one of one of my very close collaborators here, and he's also an instructor at Kennesaw, grew up there. He was a student of Ellis Marsalis, and so he's just, through and through New Orleans.
No.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's definitely a cultural difference there, different
Yeah.
parts of the country.
I,
Yeah.
I met Ellis Marsalis like 2 times. And the biggest insight I got from him was he did like a master class. And the biggest insight was, and this kind of speaks to my jazz training up to that point, until when I went to New Orleans. But he said, especially for instrumentalists, that you should learn how to sing every tune that you're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, for somebody like me, it was like crazy, because up to that point I had just been given real book charts, with the melody and then the changes, and then they're like, okay, play the changes. And it's like, okay, but you don't know the meaning of the song unless you learn the words.
That's
And then,
exactly.
yeah, and
No. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and to inform your instrumental improvisation, you should probably work on phrasing, and the easiest way to work on phrasing for improvisation is with your voice.
It's so funny that you bring that up in relationship to Ellis, because my colleague Tyrone Jackson, he that's one of the things that he talks about when we are working with the singers who are working with his piano students, and he will say to the pianist, "Do you know the lyrics to this song?" Because if you know the lyrics to this song, you would not be approaching it in the way that you are approaching it. Nor can you really understand how the vocalist will be approaching it and accompany that person effectively in a way that is collaborative and, catch the moods and everything. If you do not know the lyric to the song, you can't know the composer's intent, which should always be the starting point, right? I mean, we should respect the composer's intent, whether we at some point choose to kind of deconstruct it and, give our own, interpretation to it. But we should respect their intent and start there and figure out, how was this song born? What kind of little baby song was this? Was it people who come up and do Summertime just swinging like it's no end to it? How was that song written? It was a lullaby. Let's start there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Summertime, actually. Yeah, because that's pretty clear cut. When it comes from Gershwin,
Yeah.
time and living is easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can't really like play that like too up or jumpy or anything. It has to be a lullaby, like you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, you can, but you should know how it started.
Yeah. Or like a tune like Autumn Leaves or something. The Nat King Cole version is probably the place to start, and then you can go to like Miles Davis's version and see how it's it and everything. But it's important to know, like you were saying, where the song comes from and what the original intent is, for sure.
Yeah.
So let me see. So how many students do you have in the Kennesaw State Applied Vocal Jazz program?
Well, I'm artist in residence. I'm part-time, so I'm limited to the number of students that I can have. But I have about 6 students, and then a couple more that are not vocal jazz students, but they're in the vocal jazz combo because that's an option as well. They might be in like composition or classical voice or something, and they just want to do something related to vocal jazz, so they can take that course.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I love them. I am in my 8th year now, which blows my mind. I can't believe how quickly it's gone, and I love working with these students. I always say I just adore my students, even the ones who, challenge me. I just find that it's inspirational, to work with them, and they're fun. It's just fun. They have good energy.
Yeah, working with young people is one of the joys of my life, for sure. They get excited about stuff in different ways, and everything's so new to them, and they're on such creative journeys, and they're so full of, just unpredictability.
Yes. And
It,
I don't know how long, if you work with your students over a long period of time, but it's really beautiful for me to see them when they come in as a freshman and to observe their journey just as a person, just their personal journey in development and finding out more about who who they are and how they operate in this world over the 4 years. It is just amazing to watch
yeah,
and to be alongside them on their path on that is to me a privilege.
fantastic. Yeah, people change a lot between ages 18 and 22.
Mhm.
Most
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
It's the ages like 22, 23 through age 30, but that can be a big problem for a lot of people.
Mm, mm.
Um, but but yeah, young people, it's such a amazing thing. I started working in a grade school. Actually, my grade school that I went to when I was a kid. So I have pre-K three kids all the way up to eighth grade, and the eighth grade class is about 11 just girls, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's they drive me insane, but
I'm sorry.
it's totally fine. And I'm like, but they're so open to so many different experiences, and they're excited about different music, and they want to get up and move and express themselves. And even I've got like in my fifth grade class, two or three kids took it upon themselves to write their own Christmas song.
How
Like about
fun.
yeah, about Santa putting trinkets into the stockings and this different stuff, and um, and it's amazing, and it reminds me of like the way I was as a kid. And so I'm trying as a instructor to facilitate that and keep that creativity going. But yeah, it's like the time of the school year where I'm like, you kids are kind of growing up, like right in front of my eyes,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's amazing. It's
it's
it's so fun, and to see them and also see them how they interact with one another.
yeah.
You know, the little, the liaisons that are forged, and who emerges as the leaders, and
Yeah. And how they get into little tiffs, but then they figure it out and they resolve it. Yeah,
mhm.
to be a kid again when you could like get into a fight with somebody in your class and then like 5 minutes later you're fine, you know?
Yeah, just busting chops and then laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, okay, so let me see where I've asked pretty much every jazz musician that I've had on the podcast kind of this line of question. When do you think uh, improvisation, either in instrumental or in vocal, when do you think is appropriate for somebody to start trying out some improvisation?
Well, I think that you could start it off immediately if it's something that they're familiar with.
Yeah,
Like,
if it's informal, yeah,
yeah, it's informal. Sure, why not? I mean, if we were talking about painting, would we say no? You can only paint by numbers until at a certain point I'll let you have a blank piece of paper and then you can paint whatever you want. I mean, that makes no sense. But I will say this. I will say this. I Not every jazz singer should scat. Not every. I mean, it's not something that every jazz singer should do. Um, I have students who have varying degrees of ability with it. Some people are just like, whoo, man, it just comes out. It's supernatural. Some people, not so much. You should never feel forced to do that. So scatting is one thing. So taking a solo scatting and I'm speaking as a singer, not as not improvising like as a guitarist or a pianist or a saxophonist or whatever. As a vocalist, we live in a little bit different world in jazz. But that doesn't mean that you don't improvise because you still can sing a melody with melodic variations or with rhythmic variations that have nothing to do with taking a solo, a scat solo. So don't, if you were thinking, I couldn't sing jazz, I would never shabby dooby doo, no, maybe you never would, and that's okay. That's okay. But you can sing a song like, Summertime or Autumn Leaves or whatever, and you can do your own thing with it melodically or rhythmically and still be, improvising in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's real good. I take the approach of learning music more of like a linguistic structure, or like learning music is more like learning a language than it is like a discipline. And
Yeah.
art being the same kind of way. Yeah, kids learn how to paint by just messing around with paint and getting their fingers in it and flopping it around
Right.
and everything.
I
And
would say, oh, sorry.
you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a scale that is really easy for most ears to hear is like the blues scale, a blues
Okay.
scale. So, I mean, even on maybe the first day of combo, I'll sit with the singers in a circle, and I'll have our accompanist. I'll say, just play 12-bar blues in F. All right, and I'll say, tell me about your weekend, and they have to sing, and so they sing something about their weekend.
That's awesome.
If they just sit there, I said, what'd you eat? If they don't have any ideas, what did you eat? Who'd you talk to? Well, I went down the road and I saw Sue. Bye bye boo babe. We ate some food. If that's all they do, that's very cool. Look, they just improvised.
Yeah.
They just improvised. So over a scale that their ear is really comfortable and can hear and is very familiar, just give them a theme.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. With my students with special needs, I gravitate towards the pentatonic scale, um, especially with the keyboard or the piano, because then I can play like an E flat blues underneath it, and then if I tell the participants to just play the black keys, then they can make something that sounds pretty good, and
Yeah,
they're moving their hands, moving their fingers, and getting something else out that sounds good.
yeah,
And like a tune like So What or like Impressions, that's another good one for beginning improvisers on an instrument. And I adapt it to the special needs population, because Impressions and So What, they're just the white keys for like the A section, and then the black keys for the B section. And that's basically the entire tune. So you can give kids the experience of going between black and white, and it's ultra simple,
yeah.
which I think is super important for beginning students, and then also students with special needs.
Right. And it strips some of the scary off of it or the
Yeah.
mystery off of it. And it just allows you to think, oh, I can a little bit free up,
Yeah.
a little free. Whew.
Yeah. And I like how you said that about given the prompt of what did you do this weekend, because for anybody that has written songs or is interested in the art of songwriting and everything, oftentimes you're confronted with the experience that you have way too many choices to write about, and but if an instructor like yourself or me or whatever gives a prompt to someone, then that immediately limits the choices so they can improvise within the form or the idea.
Right. Yeah, one of the other things you were talking about songwriting, I like to read when I want to get in a songwriting mode. Sometimes some good poetry,
Yeah.
and if I'm reading it and I just catch like a really beautiful, descriptive phrase or something, it can be a jumping off point for me. Not that I'm, not ripping off anything from the poem, but it just creates a jumping off point for me
Yeah.
to like capitalize on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Who are some of your favorite poets?
I like Mary Oliver. She's been Khalil Gibran. I read from the Prophet and have gotten some beautiful imagery from that. And yeah, yeah,
Awesome. Great. I love me some Bob Dylan.
yeah. He's a poet.
He sure is. And
Poet.
He definitely knows it. And like I'll listen to some Dylan or some Neil Young, especially those two guys, and just their way of letting the words flow out. And
Yeah,
sometimes it'll trigger something in my brain, and then like some other lines will start happening for me, and then I'll be like, well, that was good, and then start writing, and then turn off their music, and then pick up a guitar, and then keep on going with my music or something.
beautiful. Love it. Yeah.
So I think it's really important for, yeah, that's an important point for songwriters to find some poets or some other songwriters that you're very inspired by,
Hmm.
and then take in their work and understand that it was created by this masterful, talent or whatever, but that talent required a lot of work, and then take it as some inspiration. Yeah.
Hmm. And also knowing that, some simple things can be very, very effective and very, very beautiful. Simple songs can be very affecting to
Yeah,
people.
most definitely.
It
Like,
doesn't have to all be, you know,
yeah,
opus.
that's the Opus 39 number 4 symphony in G flat minor.
Totally.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite songs of all time is La Bamba.
Yeah. Hmm.
That song. Absolutely love it. I've never gotten sick of playing it, and it's just C, F, and G, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplicity is very important for people learning different types of music as well.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Okay, so you have a short film documentary of your career coming out in 2025, I hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been the process with that?
That's been a completely different creative process. Um, so I'm working on that with the South Fulton Arts. It's an organization here in the Atlanta area, and what they do is they take subjects who are in the arts, and then they pair them with filmmakers in the Atlanta area because Atlanta has a big, big film scene, and and then they fund it, and it gives the filmmaker an opportunity to do some work and have something for their portfolio and everything, and enter it into festivals and stuff. And then it becomes like a marketing documentary for the artist. So I was selected for that, and it was like 2 days of shooting. Long days, interviews, and other people being interviewed who know me and work with me. And they cast little Karla. There's a sweet, sweet little girl who's doing some like dream scenes. And it's very collaborative as far as how we wanted to kind of tell the story. And it's just a short, it's like a 15-minute thing. And
Okay.
I've seen a rough cut. The final is not yet completed, but it was a completely different process and very, very interesting to be part of. And I feel really happy and honored to be able to do it. Um, it's again, it's kind of like, a little like, it's talking about
Yeah. Yeah.
me. but but it's good. I like it. It's nice. It's
Good.
nice.
Yeah, it's always tough. Yeah, if there's something, yeah, that's all about you, you get so self-conscious about it.
I know.
And,
I know.
yeah, but that's what your fans want. Then they want to celebrate you as an artist and connect with you and see, a window into your, into your career and everything.
And if there are things that have gone on for me that somebody else might find interesting, or might help them along their creative route, or their dreaming route of whatever it is they want to do, then that would be beautiful. That's
Very
all I
cool.
want.
Awesome. So let's take, I think there's just got about 4 more minutes until we got to wrap up. But would you like to talk about your upcoming events in St. Louis, which is my hometown? Oh, by the way, where'd you grow up in St. Louis?
Are you going to ask me where I went to high school?
Yeah, where'd you go to high school? It's the
I
St.
grew
Louis
up,
podcast. I got to do it.
yeah, I grew up in Baldwin, and I went to Lafayette.
Oh,
Uh,
my wife teaches there.
no kidding.
Yeah.
Ah, well, I was there a long time ago, but where did you go?
I went to St. Louis U High School.
Okay, all right. Salute.
Yeah. Um, and
Um,
Yeah, I went to grade school in Warson Woods at St. Genevieve du Bois. But
Okay.
yeah, so I grew up in Warson Woods, which
All
is
right.
pretty close to Kirkwood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so West St. Louis County, but yeah, and we're going to be, I'll be back there for the holidays, and I'm going to be coming back with Tom Kennedy for a show. He and I last worked together in St. Louis in 2004, so it's basically a 20 years since the last time we were on a gig together in St. Louis.
Wow.
And Tom's well known in the music community in St. Louis, just a world renowned. He just got back from a European tour. He's a bassist and a composer. He's writing a lot of his own music now. And when I lived there, I moved from St. Louis at the end of 2004. Excuse me, but during 2004, I was with his jazz group. I was a vocalist with his jazz group. And we recorded a record together many years ago, and we're working on another one right now of all original music. And so this will be a nice opportunity to come back and make some music and have family and friends and everything around the hometown. So
Yeah.
it'll be a good time. Yeah,
Awesome. What,
yeah.
where I could look this up, but where are the shows?
I should say this at the Blue
Okay.
Strawberry down in the Central West End, and we're going to be there with Ken Keener on piano and Kevin Giannino on drums. And we're there on the 19th and the 20th. The 20th is sold out, and I think the 19th is just within a few seats of selling out. Last time I heard, which was last week. So, but maybe we'll come back if there's enough
You know,
interest.
you gotta keep the fans. Yeah, Blue Strawberry is cool. Another podcast guest I had on here, Ken Haller. He performs there a lot,
Yeah.
uh, and he's a pediatrician and a performer as well. Actually, just retired, and we had a very interesting conversation.
Huh.
What I have so 12/19. That's a Thursday, right?
Yes, it's the Thursday and the Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're really looking forward to it. The club has been great, and I have not been, but I've heard that it's a wonderful place and great food and everything. So,
Yeah, it's a real
yeah,
nice place.
forward to it.
Yeah, I can't make it because I'm doing a Christmas show at my school,
Oh, well, shoot.
but best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, it's about 1:30 my time, so 2:30 your time. Is anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk. It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Awesome. Very nice to meet you, Karla. And my guest today was Karla Harris, a jazz singer. Thank you so much for your time. And I think this is going to be a really neat, quick episode for me. Usually my episodes go like 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
all right. We got it done.
we got it done. It's great. All right, Karla. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care.